Welcome back, Stillmaniacs. Today we are delving into some more Stillmania, but before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. As relevant now as ever, Stillmania has attracted many a wargamer into the more refined area of the hobby. More than 2 decades ago, when the article this video is based on was originally penned, Nigel Stillman had already been gaming for most of his life. His love of painting armies, modelling terrain and creating impressive battlefields is evident in the sheer amount he could write about the subject. Each article submission totalling upwards of 3,000 words. Nigel was a true workhorse. This was clearly put to good use in his employment writing various Warhammer army books of the day. This time around we are looking at playstyles, use of scenarios, the use of larger units and tactics in general, otherwise known as proper battles. Something that we see less of in wargaming today, with pick up and play styles of gaming being more popular than grinding campaigns of titanic proportions, or heaven forbid, Warhammer Total War filling in for our love of large-scale combat and conquest. To be honest, there is simply more to do out there than there was in the 80s and 90s. Updating Facebook, completing Tinder and online gaming is rather popular, or so I hear. I wouldn't know, as my internet is delivered by a little old man who drops off a sack of megabytes once a week. Anyway, Stillmania is back, and as far as I'm concerned, it's here to stay. There is more than one way to play Warhammer. Not many people know this. Most of the games I hear about or see being played seem to be stereotyped and predictable. 2 3,000 point armies clash, or rather stand around thinking about it, and fight doggedly, wearing each other down until 2 or 3 awesome characters end up stalking each other across the stricken battlefield. Everyone else has either been slain or has fled. It's a bit like chess, where the entire board is cleared until it's down to a king, a rook and a queen stalking the losing player's king and trying to secure checkmate. These aren't the heroic battles of history or literature that I've read about. What is the reason for this? I can tell you now for certain that it isn't the game or the rules. I have played and seen many exciting and decisive games which are not at all like those I have just described. And these games were played using the very same rules and troops as anyone else has. What then is the secret ingredient? It is using your imagination. There are some styles of play which definitely lack imagination. I would like to identify a few of these. A fussy obsession with the right kind of magic item, and, worse still, the quest for the all-powerful combination of magic items. No doubt you only ever play against complete novices if you rely on these tactics. They don't scare me. Playing too defensively, relying on shooting, magic and war machines to beat your opponent whilst hiding your own troops in their deployment area. This means they are well placed to flee right off the table when they go, and if you are playing a decisive opponent, rest assured they will go. Using tiny units of too few models. By attacking in detail, you will be defeated wholesale. Don't let a mob of 50 goblins with a colossal rank bonus grind you down. Not playing to the spirit of the rules, or, worse still, not reading the rules for yourself and believing in hearsay. Who hasn't seen occasions when all present have known perfectly well what the rules intend, but someone has chosen to stretch the letter of the rules to gain an advantage. If you can see what the rules intend, then the rule has succeeded in communicating the way to proceed. You can't get out of it, I'm afraid. Play in the spirit of the rules and the game will benefit. Play the game for the game's sake. Always playing against inexperienced players. Some players only ever take on players they know to be less experienced than themselves. They know, or they think they know, the rules better and, unfortunately, manage to convince a new player of their knowledge. As long as they avoid crushing defeat by the experienced tacticians, they can maintain a myth of invincibility. Be fair to newcomers to the game and accept the challenge of an experienced opponent. You may learn something. Here are the counter tactics for this problem. It's a good idea for newcomers of the game to seek each other out and play plenty of small, friendly games just to learn the rules. Put aside all concerns about winning for the time being. Just concentrate on learning the rules. Discuss and debate the interpretations between yourselves and hone your tactics to perfection. Then you'll be ready to take on the more experienced players and the know-it-alls. Then you'll see for yourself whether or not they really know anything. New ideas. As part of playtesting new armies and campaign scenarios, some completely new approaches to playing Warhammer have been revealed to us. We have never had so much fun with 1000 points. The following explains some of these ideas. Small armies. For a long time, everyone always played with a 3000 point army. It was getting to the stage where players felt that they couldn't start playing Warhammer at all until they had collected and painted 3000 points. Even the most industrious and diligent players were becoming old before their army had taken the field. Then came Jervis's tournament. He, in his infinite wisdom, set the armies at a sensible and manageable size of 2000 points. Suddenly, it became possible to gather an army rather more quickly. Note, this is something that continued through the years that followed. 2000 points soon replaced 3000 points as the standard Warhammer army size and the typical points limit for tournaments. When you set your target on 2000 rather than 3000 points, you begin to think differently about the composition of your army. Perhaps the biggest influence is the welcome knowledge that you can expect to meet opponents who have a similar army. The emphasis falls back on useful tactical units rather than awesome, all-powerful characters and monsters at colossal points cost. These have their place, and a tactical scheme can be built around them, but they become just another tactical option rather than a necessity. This is the way it should be. This is not to say that collecting 3000 points is too far. It isn't. You probably need 3000 points in your collection to have a good choice of units to pick a 2000 point army from. Also, there will always be occasions when you want to use the full 3000 points. Especially if you indulge in a campaign. One of the good things about a campaign is that it will generate opportunities for armies of 1000, 2000 and 3000 points or more. In this way, the tactics and strategy of Warhammer can be exploited to the full. Through playtesting scenarios, I have discovered that quite amazing battles can be played with armies of only 1000 points. The general of such a force can be a hero or a master wizard. Since the battle is a scenario, there is an objective to the game and a sudden death victory condition. This means that if one side gains the objective, the battle ends suddenly in a victory for that side. Otherwise, the game continues for a set number of turns, i.e. until dusk puts an end to the hostilities. In a campaign involving several battles, victory in one of the battles results in advantage in the next, or the final battle. The effect of this is to concentrate the mind on choosing an army of 1000 points which can win the objective. You end up thinking completely differently to the usual set-piece battle. You also end up playing differently. Players become more decisive. It no longer makes sense to hang around the deployment zone shooting for ages. Troops are sent forward in reckless attempts to snatch victory, and guess what? They usually do. Note, you can have really good battles with relatively small armies, as the tournament decider in White Dwarf 190 proved. Each army was only 2000 points, but the result was still exciting and tense right to the end. Dramatic scenarios. A scenario is a brief story, plot or script if you like, for the battle. It tells you a few facts about the encounter. These are basically why the battle is being fought, what the objectives and victory conditions of each side are, the forces available to each commander, and any special rules you care to invent for the purposes of the battle. What a scenario does is introduce a little bit of thought into the game, which will make it a lot more interesting. Think about all the adventure films you've seen, especially the storyline, and consider how the film director might approach a game of Warhammer. Well, you and your opponent are the directors. Do you think of the game as a drama or as a competition? There are occasions in which it can be either or both, but on the whole, I think there is more fun to be had by thinking of it principally as a dramatic event. Often, two players will set up a table and deploy their armies into battle lines without a thought as to where or why the battle is being fought. This is a very dry and abstract thing to do. With all the rich background information there is for the armies of the Warhammer world, isn't this a rather unimaginative way to go about it? Should every battle be the same old fight with just a different opponent? I think this comes from the same dark abyss of the mind as the desire for all the armies to be the same. Really rather bland, with war machines in all of them and cavalry in the dwarf and Skaven army lists. Tree-loving wood elves wielding tree-chopping axes and a host of other things not in character with the army's race or culture. Alas, we frequently get requests for this type of nonsense. The time to clean out the cobwebs is nigh. The standard set-piece battle with 2 3,000 point armies is actually a scenario. It is the pitched battle scenario. Both armies have obviously marched to the battlefield, encountered each other, camped for the night, and deployed at sunrise, a bowshot apart. Actually, there are, at the very least, a dozen ways in which 2 large armies can approach the battlefield and deploy. One example of a possible variation, which I have tried a lot recently, is where each player deploys 1 unit alternately. The player who finished deploying his army first, i.e. has the fewest units, is allowed to move a unit a few inches forward for each remaining unit his opponent deploys. This represents a small compact army gaining ground, while a larger rambling horde struggles to organise a battle line. By varying the game in this small way, you can give prominence to completely different tactics and style of play. Other possibilities include troops arriving on side edges of the table as reinforcements, and deployment zones which are deeper or surround the opposing army. These various ways of deploying for battle imply the story behind the battle in some ways. Perhaps both sides are rushing for possession of a dominant terrain feature in the middle of the battlefield. It could even be a temple containing magic items. Perhaps one force has been surrounded and is grimly holding a village from attack on 3 sides. Or one side has been outflanked and is caught between 2 prongs of the enemy army's attack. You can weigh up the strategic advantages and disadvantages to either side, and compensate in some way by the arrangement of the terrain or by allowing one force to have more points than the other. Shock, horror, gasp! There is no reason why 2 armies should always use the same points value when the game is not part of a competition. If you decide that the victory condition for the smaller army is to hold out for a certain number of turns, and the victory condition of the greater army is to win by the 4th turn, then both sides can win. In this way you have introduced an objective. In this case, the objective is to hold out until nightfall or win before darkness allows the foe to escape. It is in fact a rearguard action, and the task of the smaller force is to delay. The battle is obviously part of a larger campaign. Other objectives could be the capture of a vital feature such as a bridge, the slaying of an important character, breaking through enemy barring the pass or ford, and so on. Note, over a weekend, some of the studio staff fought out an undead attack on an Empire castle. They played down the length of a 12 by 6 foot table, a simple but effective way of making the battle something different. Big battalions. The minimum number of models in a Warhammer regiment is usually 5. For some reason, everyone seems satisfied with minimum-sized units of elite troops. Whether it is 5 Knights Panther, 5 Cold One Knights, or 5 Chaos Knights, the story is always the same. Small units of the best troops. Why limit the elite troops to such small units? Surely victory goes to the side with the most of the best troops. The implication of this strategy is that the rest of the points value of the army is being used either on other small units of elite troops, or more likely on numbers of unreliable, less hard-hitting troops. The points are probably also allocated to war machines, magic items, and wizards. Small units of elite troops therefore go hand in hand with a defensive strategy, relying partly on holding back, missile fire, awesomely equipped characters, and magic. You could argue that it is common sense to go for small units of troops rather than big units, especially since big regiments cost a lot of points and take a long time to paint. Perhaps you can console yourself with this after being stung by defeat. If your opponents follow the same strategy, then they too have concentrated on missile fire, magic, war machines and characters. What do you think they're going to aim at with all this stuff? Your small, elite regiments, of course. I have recently started to adopt a completely different tactical doctrine. This is to deploy big units of the best troops. By big units I mean such monstrosities as 20 Knights Panther. They'll take on an entire army. 50 halberdiers, here to stay. 50 flagellants. Are the enemy hitting us, or are there fleas in my rags? 50 dwarf slayers. The ones that reach the foe are very angry. 60 high elf spearmen. Can you believe it? We don't care about flame cannons. 24 Kislev horse archers. Come and get us, you fanatics. 20 winged lancers. Smash through black orcs and savage orcs and shout, "Who's next?" 100 goblin archers. Overwhelming. Or 30 crossbowmen. A wall of bolts. I've either used these myself and won, or been horribly defeated by such things at the hands of my foes, which went a long way to making me respect big units. I first started using big battalions just for the hell of it. Then I saw that it worked. It brought victory. I began to believe in profiles and put my trust in armour rather than magic items. The doctrine could be succinctly expressed as victory goes to he who rolls the most dice. Big units have always been the best option with such troops as goblins and Skaven. The low points cost and the need for the rank bonus make big units the most sensible option. Even so, the units could be a lot bigger than those generally used. It's amazing what 50 goblins can do. The tactical advantage of numbers applies equally well to better quality troops, if not more so. The main disadvantage is the high points value invested in a single unit. My favoured army now consists of several big units led by characters including wizards, supported by skirmishers, 1 or 2 small units, a unit of flying troops, and 1 or 2 war machines. One of the big units will probably be a huge unit of fairly low points value troops. The others will be big units of very good troops. The emphasis of the entire army is, thus, on offensive action, with most of the points invested in shock troops. Such an army attacks immediately and aims for a quick, decisive victory. It is a tiger which goes for the throat. This kind of army is very different from the sort that is most often seen, which tends to feature missile troops, awesome characters, and numerous average-sized units of average troops. Not only do big units fight well, but they also look good. Don't underestimate the psychological effect of this on your opponent. If he is already a cautious general, and most people are, I think, he will become more cautious. If so, any rash moves you make are more likely to pay off. You can risk your big units because he will be wary of tackling them. They also have a far better chance of surviving a battle and therefore depriving the enemy of victory points. Big units of good troops represent such a points investment that you will want them to be reliable, persistent, and difficult to beat. This means looking at the leadership, protecting against magic, and giving the unit every possible advantage in combat. Pick troops with good leadership for your big shock units. It's always worth including a standard bearer and musician, as the advantages these confer on the unit is especially useful to the big unit. A big unit should have a very big and impressive standard. The unit should also be led by a hero rather than a champion to gain the extra leadership. The general and perhaps the army standard bearer and a wizard can join a big unit to make it even more resilient, as well as gaining protection for themselves. This is where magic items come in. The hero and any other characters with the unit can have magic items which help the unit. Pick only the most useful magic items, which are not always the most expensive. Pick magic items which go with the intended tactical role of the unit. There is no need to load down the characters with items. This is a waste of points. These points are better spent on more troops in the unit to make it bigger. I find that there are only a few magic items that I really like and use frequently, mostly the Sword of Fortitude and Amulet of Fire, and I rarely give a character more than one item. The unit itself may be allowed to carry a magic standard, which is useful. By a careful and economical choice of items, you can give the unit some protection from magic and perhaps enhance its fighting ability a bit. However, the leadership value and number of models in the regiment are the key factors. A unit that cannot be easily wiped out and won't flee is already fairly resistant to whatever the enemy can hurl at it. You should combine this with striking hard and fast before the enemy have a chance to damage it much. The flanks of a big regiment are vulnerable, but often, if the unit is smashing through all before it, the enemy, which could have posed a threat to its flanks, are fleeing in panic anyway. Either that, or your opponent is scared to attack with them. The flanks can be protected by skirmishing troops and the odd small unit who can face off or attack and pin any enemy threatening the flanks. The other thing to watch out for are small units of enemy troops who pin your big regiment. Usually the big unit will smash them, pursue, crash into the next enemy unit, smash that, and so on. However, it is better for your plans if you can counterattack or distract enemy units who may try to pin your big regiment as they advance. It's a good idea to advance with all your army, especially if it includes big, high points value units. If a unit with good leadership panics or breaks, this is in fact an atypical action for the unit. The unit can be expected to rally, since the odds are generally in its favour on the leadership tests. It makes sense then to advance the unit so that if the worst happens, it can be rallied before it flees off the battlefield. This is especially important for fast-moving mounted troops. Time and time again I see good cavalry flee off the table forever because they didn't advance and take ground, a mistake I no longer make. Their general dithered. Advance already, make space behind your battle line. Attacking troops are for attacking, defending troops defend better as far forward as possible. Where do the points come from to invest in big shock battalions? The savings are made by not spending too much on magic items, characters and missile troops, and by not spreading the points across several small or not particularly effective units. Any troop type armed principally for hand-to-hand combat can be made more effective in a big unit, whether it consists of elite cavalry or unarmoured infantry. There are, however, some troop types which perform well as small units. This is because they concentrate their hitting power and so function like a bigger unit. Such troops are those with more than one attack or with special attack modes. Witch elves and war dancers spring to mind. Such troops are excellent as small units to protect the flanks of the big units. Missile troops are another type who can be effective in small units in combination with big units. Usually, players rely too much on wearing down the enemy with shooting. On average, half of the models who shoot will miss, half of the hits will not wound, and half of the wounds will be saved. You can expect roughly one good volley per battle, and one opportunity to shoot at a really vulnerable target with each missile unit. Small units of missile troops can go and seek their targets and shooting opportunities. If you are going to rely on missile fire, then the big unit principle applies once more. The more models there are shooting, the more dice you throw, the more effective the unit will be. You can expect to defeat small enemy units, but not big ones. The big missile unit will not be able to bring all models to bear in each volley, but will be more resistant if engaged in hand-to-hand combat. Once again, move the troops forward so that they can be rallied if they flee. Note, the massed regiments of the Gathering of Might in White Dwarf 181 can serve as inspiration. Although the battle itself was also massive, the awesomely destructive potential of the large units wasn't lost on the players. Proper tactics. Listening to players discussing tactics or describing their recent dire defeats or nondescript, partial, disputed and no doubt disreputable victories is enlightening. You seldom hear such phrases as "I attacked in force on the left while holding back on the right," or "I advanced in the centre while refusing the flanks," nor "I made an oblique attack with the shock troops," or "the battle line advanced in echelon." In other words, battles are not described in the same terms as those you read about in history or literature. Instead, you hear about rolling 10 dice to hit and scoring 1 wound, or a wizard hurling a spell which rebounds off some magical item and frazzles a goblin, or there is the main clash in the centre of the battlefield between 3 knights and 11 elves which goes on all day. Ah, yes, the stuff of legend. If you want heroic battles with decisive victories, then you need to adopt a heroic style of play with decisive tactics. If you do this, you'll wipe the floor with opponents who are obsessed with detail but lack the generalship to grasp the broader picture. Then you describe your victory in such glowing phrases as "the left flank advanced in force," ignoring the desultory shooting of the foe and brushing aside the under-strength and lackluster enemy regiments who barred their way. They then wheeled around to smash the enemy centre. Group your units into higher tactical formations. Too many players scatter units here and there, thinking only of the position from the point of view of the unit on its own. They forget the greater battle plan. Think about the hand. Each finger is a different length and grips from various angles with changing strength. But together, the hand can crush or tighten into a fist. Your units should be grouped to work together like the fingers of your hand. They should be a fist to smite your foe. That just about wraps up the second of the Stillmania articles. With it in mind, I encourage you to take some of this valuable knowledge into your own wargaming. Join me next time for some more wargaming content. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.